Welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. As usual, I'm Chris, here again with Patrick.
Yo.
Steven.
Hello.
And our special guest, back by popular demand for a second week, Gregory C. Allen.
Hey, thank you for the positive response that I've heard from everybody.
There were a lot of votes for you.
I was shocked. And once again, thank you very much for everybody that voted for me to come
It was
back.
you or nobody, and most people voted for you.
Yeah.
It was a couple for nobody, but...
You might have to be here permanently.
So it was a really, really magical moment. How did you feel during the rose ceremony, Greg?
I mean, it's hard to describe. You see all these people that get nervous when they receive an award at the Oscars and everything. It's overwhelming, and you think you've got what you're going to say, and it's all lined up. It's ready to go, and as soon as you get up there, it's just... You forget. It's mouth diarrhea.
Can we play Greg out now?
The listeners can't see the tears welling up in Greg's eyes right now.
I'm moved, and I appreciate it, and thank you.
Well, Greg's back, like we said before. he's dedicated 3 episodes of his podcast, What a Disaster, to us 3 clowns, so the least we can do is give
It's
him
actually
2.
4 because Patrick's doing 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's got 2 things to say.
I have 2 things to say.
We had to stretch Miracle Mile out into 2 episodes because we were just so impressed with it.
All right. Well, over here on Every Horror Movie on Netflix, we are slaves to fan requests. So we got a letter from Carrie in Texas.
Not a letter.
It was a message.
That's like a letter.
Don't romanticize it.
I'm trying to romanticize.
It was handwritten, beautiful cursive. I mean, even the envelope was handwritten. That was impressive.
Carrie, impeccable
Just a wonder
penmanship.
to behold.
Anyway, you're underselling this, Stephen. That was my point.
I didn't even want to open it. I just felt like it would desecrate the whole thing.
She said, "Hey."
Chris was willing to tear it open.
She said, "Hey, you guys, I hate the show. Why don't you assholes review a movie like The Ritual?" So we said...
Wait, no. Did she say a movie like The Ritual, or you should review The Ritual?
No, she was actually very polite, and she said, "Hey, I saw The Ritual. It was creepy. Check it out." And I said, "Hey, you know what? We got nothing better to do. We got to watch them all at some point. So this week, we're breaking the order. We're watching the goddamn Ritual."
She also actually said positive things about the show as well, right?
I don't know.
Mostly negative, but she wanted us to review The Ritual. Yeah.
It's easy to gloss over praise or criticisms because you're just like, I don't want to hear that.
We kid.
Carrie, if you listen to this episode, please shoot us another Facebook message and let us know if you would view, Q, or screw this episode.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, the listener can become the rater.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's a critic.
The listenee? I don't know how that works.
So The Ritual, it's a Netflix original horror movie, which we're going to be seeing more and more of those. I mean, I think they've signed up to release fucking 750 original series and movies this year. So
Is that an exact number?
it's almost one a day.
I was
Damn.
surprised to see that every horror movie on Netflix is on Netflix.
It will be. I'm sure all we have to do is send them a fucking tape.
No, I mean every movie I've seen on Netflix is on there.
Oh.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of movies.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I'm following him. It makes sense to me.
We're going to start calling you it.
Well, so The Ritual, guys. This was not only had a fan recommended this to me, but I mentioned on the last episode, a couple of people in my life said, I knew about it. I'd seen the reviews coming out. It was one of those movies that just kind of, when we say Netflix original, what does that mean? This is one where this was a movie that was in the can before Netflix picked it up and put it out in the U.S. It was...
Well, allow me to jump in, because Netflix original used to mean something.
Yeah. It still does sometimes, but not in this case. Here, they're slapping their brand onto a film. We even see it in the credits. It says, in the normal credit font, a Netflix original film. It's not really, but it's the first opportunity for us to see it here in the U.S. I think it did have a theatrical run in the U.K. or something, or went to VOD over there. But it's a movie that people are talking about. I think it was actually kind of a great comeback from the Cloverfield paradox. This dropped like a week later, and people were kind of jaded by that movie, really actually very upset by it. And I think The Ritual, it kind of saved face for them. It was kind of a hit, I think.
But it's kind of the same business strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like they're taking these movies where someone makes a movie and they're thinking, should we release this in theaters? They're not really sure what its prospects are going to be, so they say, well, we'll just sell it to Netflix instead.
And what is, I mean, I really want to know, we should do more research, but, you know, what does a filmmaker make from Netflix for having their film on Netflix? Like, it's got to be more cost effective than putting it out in theaters and hoping that by some chance it will become a hit. You know, how much money is Netflix dropping on these indie movies?
Should we just make one and sell it to Netflix?
We should try it. I mean, we've seen both American Poltergeist movies. I think we're capable of it.
One of these days on our podcast about horror movies on Netflix, we should actually do some research on these questions we ask repeatedly about Netflix's business model, because we do this all the time. We're 25 plus episodes in and we're still none the wiser about how this actually fucking works. So we should bone up a little.
We're
on
just
that.
puppets, and we just don't question the marionette. We don't know how it works. We just know.
Well, isn't the
Netflix
puppet the
pays
marionette?
us, and we just don't ask questions.
This podcast has no affiliation with Netflix.
Except for where all the movies come from.
Yeah. For a lot of movies.
Netflix is where all the movies come from. This is like, Mommy, where do movies come from?
But yeah, I long for the days. Like,
Well, honey, when Annette and Afflex love each other very much,
They fuck. And then we get the ritual.
And then, yeah, and then
Stork brings us the ritual.
our eyes are fucked for an hour and a half.
Chris, you were saying something of actual substance.
It's not substantive. It's just, you know, House of Cards like is the first Netflix original series I remember. I think there were some before House of Cards.
That was the first really big hit, though.
But but like for a while, Netflix would put out a Netflix original, and you paid attention because it was a Netflix original. Like, even like, remember Marco Polo came out, and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, maybe, you know, it's a Netflix original. And then now it's just like, Netflix original, who gives a shit?
Well, yeah, remember that the Idris Elba, and now Greg and I know that Idris, I always thought it was Idris. It's Idris Elba. We learned this after we did our Thor Ragnarok episode on What a Disaster. Which, did we explain what a disaster is? That's Greg's podcast.
Whose podcast? Mine?
It's yours.
Oh, I do a
Yeah.
podcast.
Anyways, remember when Netflix put out that Idris Elba movie? What was that called? Beasts of No Nation, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the first Netflix original film, and I was like, "Whoa, Netflix made a movie!" That was only like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that the difference there is that actually had a theatrical run because it was eligible for the Oscars, which they're very careful about doing. Now, I don't understand the Netflix original thing, because it's like, you know, either you have a Netflix subscription or you don't. Like, I don't think anybody's gonna be like, oh, I don't have Netflix for some reason in 2018, so I should get it to watch this new Cloverfield movie.
Oh, well, you do not know my mother.
Did your mom get a Netflix subscription to watch the Cloverfield movie? Because she regrets it.
My mom, actually, this is brand new news. This is, fresh off the presses. I just gave my mom access to my Netflix account so that she can watch Mudbound, because she watched the Oscars and was like, I can't get Mudbound from the library on DVD. And I was like, yeah, that's probably because it's only on Netflix. So.
You heard it here first. Patrick is a Netflix sharer.
Yep.
But I'm like, okay, we know it's only on Netflix, so why do they have to remind us by stamping their brand not only on the top of the page, but on the poster for the film itself, and then in the credits for the film itself? Like, it's actually kind of great branding, but...
I mean, as a producer,
I mean,
it seems like putting it in the credits, and it seems like everything's a Netflix original now, though. Like, they're just buying stuff, and they're like, let's put our name on it and call it a day.
Exactly. Some of these are films like...
It stopped mattering.
Mute or Before I Wake, the Mike Flanagan movie, are movies that had been completed for a long time and couldn't find distributors. So it's not like Netflix said, Duncan Jones, go make a movie for me, or Mike Flanagan, go make a movie for me. It was like these movies had sat on the shelf and Netflix bought them up and slapped their name on it.
I mean, what production company doesn't stamp their name on the poster, the credits, and whatever?
I guess that's true, but I just think that
no
now, like in the now, like, I don't know, Netflix original seems to mean something to certain people that I don't think it actually means. Like, it carries a weight as if it's any different than like any other film that comes out that a studio slaps her name on because they paid money for it. Now, like, a Netflix original seems to be important and to like grab headlines,
but I mean,
in a way that they don't deserve necessarily.
Is Netflix a studio or a producer? They're just, I mean,
distributor.
Right?
I would say distributor. Yeah,
They throw money at something and call it good. It's weird. It would be like going into an MJR and seeing an MJR original movie.
yeah, right.
Well, I think what we might
MJR is not a distributor, though.
Oh, it's a...
Well,
It's
the
a
thing
theater,
with
is what we're talking
Netflix is like, the thing that bothers me
Netflix
is they're
is
almost
blurring
like,
lines.
look what we've done for you, look what we're doing for you. Like, they're trying to like remind you, like, keep your subscription because we're curating this content for you. Like that's where it gets kind of murky for me,
we might be witnessing an arms race, basically, because there's other streaming competitors knocking at the door. We got the Amazon Prime, we got the Hulu, Disney's doing their own shit, and it's going to come down to like who has exclusive content. And just like software companies and Apple and all these companies buy like software patents in bulk to sit on them just in case they need them someday, that might be what Netflix is doing. Maybe they're looking forward to a day where like everything that Fox and Warner Brothers and Paramount comes out is available to all streamers. So what do you have that's specific to your platform? And they're just trying to scoop up a bunch of shit that no one else is ever going to be able to get.
That could be, and if everybody brings the prices down, it wouldn't be a matter of who's got what. It'll just be a matter of how we're going to watch all of these things. Because I mean, at $7-8 a month, everybody's going to grab the Disney one because it's going to have the Marvel movies in it. Netflix's price is going to have to come down to match up with that. It's going to get pretty cool in that world as far as streaming content providers is concerned.
Well, whatever happens, we'll be there for you, listener.
It may turn into every horror movie on insert platform here.
It should be every horror movie on Shudder. Like, if we actually had self-respect and wanted to watch good horror films, we'd watch the major horror streaming platform service. But nope, here we are in the Netflix ghetto with The Ritual. Anybody want to set this one up?
Well, The Ritual, it has so much in common with the last movie we watched, Backcountry.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kill List.
It does have a lot in common with Kill List.
That's the last movie I watched. It usually is.
So we've got 4 English blokes who know their way around the pub, and
it's actually 5 to begin with.
Yeah,
right?
there are 5.
There are 5
at the very beginning.
Well, in the prologue, there's 5.
Spoiler alert! 5 minutes in.
5 minutes in, one of them dies. The rest of them decide to go on this hiking trip in Sweden, and guess what? It turns into a shit show.
And they go on the hiking trip because it was the dead friend's idea, which was not a very popular idea with the rest of the friends.
Yeah, nobody wanted to do it except for the dead guy.
Yeah, so then it's like the memorial trip for him.
They do it to honor him, and they decide to take a shortcut, and they go into the woods, and
you know what? It wouldn't be called, if it was a real path, it wouldn't be called a shortcut. It would be called a route. That's something I learned from this movie.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
And they end up stumbling across some sort of occult symbolism, some effigies, some spooky stuff, some hallucinations, and they may be being hunted by someone or something. I think that is a good way to describe it.
Yeah,
I think so. So in the opening, we get 5 friends. I think they're university friends, right?
That's kind of the implication.
Uni.
They're out on a uni, as they say in Britain.
They do say the uni.
They're out on a pub crawl. We don't really learn much about them. They're all kind of indistinguishable from each other. They just seem like 5 guys out having a good time.
Seemed like mumblecore for a minute.
All British people look
for a
the
minute.
Same.
Additional dialogue by the cast. And one of them, this guy who looks like Chris O'Dowd, who's actually Rafe Spall, Timothy Spall's son,
or a less handsome Ryan Reynolds.
So Chris, if a less handsome Ryan Reynolds was British, he'd be Chris O'Dowd, or apparently Rafe Spall. He decides he wants another drink. He wants another bottle to cap the night off. Everybody else is going for the Uber, so he and his friend who proposed going on this trip to Sweden go into a convenience store, and it gets knocked up. And Chris
knocked
O'Dowd
up means pregnant.
Yes, they
knocked over.
Knocked over. Is that what they say?
Yeah, knock over a liquor store.
They knocked over the liquor store.
Patrick would know. He's robbed like
held
3
up
tonight.
Yeah,
held up.
They held up. They robbed. So it's being robbed.
It's being robbed,
violently assaulted and robbed.
And Chris O'Dowd, which is what I'm going to call him from now on. Maybe I'll come up with a funnier name for him. He kind of hides behind a liquor shelf as
he does the sensible thing.
Well, it's kind of like the movie.
He does the cowardly thing.
He does. It's we'll get into this in a minute. But anyway, he does the cowardly thing. He does it's fight or flight. He runs. He goes around the corner. His friend doesn't have an opportunity to get away and gets brutally murdered. And the whole time Chris O'Dowd he's got the bottle of vodka in his hand. He's thinking like, should I go around the corner and try and save him or not? It's a great moral dilemma. Like immediately we're putting ourselves in his shoes. What would you do in this situation?
It's a really intense scene.
That's why I fucking carry.
God. So from there on, we actually immediately we cut to Sweden. They're on the trip. They don't waste any time cutting to 6 months, whatever later. These guys they're doing this trip in honor of their dead friend. They clearly all have animosity toward Chris O'Dowd for doing the.
Just no.
Can't help
What's his name?
Rafe Spall. We'll just call him by the actor's name from now on.
He's always calling people's names out. I don't remember what anybody calls him.
What is his name? It doesn't matter. Anyway, Rafe Spall. They have a lot of that's the actor's name.
I know,
we can call him
I know.
Rafe Spall.
It's almost like it sounds like a joke of a name though.
He was in Prometheus.
He was in Prometheus, yeah.
Because Luke, that's what I thought. Luke is the main
it's
character's
Luke,
name.
Dom, the ones that are surviving.
Phil,
Luke, Dom, Phil,
Hutch.
and Hutch.
Yeah.
I don't know who the fuck any of those are. I know Luke's the main guy.
Phil he looked Indian,
Phil
I think.
is, basically, and that's his main character trait.
And
Yeah,
Dom was the fat guy.
the brown one.
And Hutch was the other one.
Okay. Yeah, Hutch is
the alpha male.
kind of the swaggery asshole. Yeah.
Hutch was the guy that kind of reminded me of the guy from Backcountry, the Irish guy from Backcountry.
Yeah.
I mean,
The kind of a combination of both guys from Backcountry, actually.
Right. He really, if they made a baby, that's the guy.
He kind of reminded me, speaking of Prometheus, of the main guy in Prometheus. I don't know why. Maybe just the buzz cut, but...
Whose wife follows us on Twitter.
She doesn't follow us on Twitter. She did like one of our tweets, though. We're almost there. We've almost made it.
We're big time here.
Well, so these guys are out in northern Sweden. It's gorgeous. Lots of great nature photography here.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
Reminded me of a time... Well, I guess that comes a little bit later when this occurred to me. We'll bring it up. But there's clearly a rift in the friendship. Luke is...
Chris knows a thing or two about shooting beautiful, placid, widescreen nature
He does.
shots.
You can
Not
find
like
his
that.
CV on
He's
our
a critic.
website.
Not like that, though. No, I haven't shot anything as beautiful as these forests in Sweden. Made me want to go.
You know what? People in Sweden probably look at Michigan and they're like, wow, that is a beautiful place.
I thought about that, actually, because you can tell in some of the shots I was looking at, like, the ground cover and how they have grasses, but it's, like, a little different. And, like, in England, like, the grasses seem like they're a little fluffier or something like that. And then I was like, oh, probably people look at the ground covering in Michigan and they're like, oh, wow, that looks so cool and exotic. I want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, the grass is always greener, as they say. It's a good... Because, I mean, what we see every day isn't going to have the same beauty to us as the things that are unique and exotic. So,
Yeah.
Do you feel, Chris, like there are parts of Michigan that you could shoot for northern Sweden after seeing this movie?
That you could substitute? Like,
Yeah.
That would... No.
No.
What? Not even in the UP? Are you crazy?
Even in the
At
UP?
least as that movie is concerned, maybe not the mountains, but
I think the UP has a very specific look compared to what we see in this movie of Sweden.
Was this actually shot in Sweden? That's an important question. Are we actually seeing Sweden?
I took for granted
was it
that
Norway or
was.
Sweden?
I did too, yeah. No, it was Sweden.
That's a good question, but that's a good question.
Do we know that, though?
I don't know if it was shot
I'm
in
saying that's
Sweden.
where it's set. I don't know where it was shot.
Oh, yeah. It's
I couldn't
definitely-
remember if it was Norway or Sweden.
It's set
Sweden.
in Sweden,
Yeah,
and
close enough.
it looks like what I imagine it looks like in Sweden. So I don't know why they would shoot it anywhere else.
New Zealand seems to cover for everything. So
Maybe.
Oh, it's a British film. I mean, it's a pain in the ass to... I mean, especially if you're on a low budget, to pack up and go to fucking Sweden.
Especially with Brexit.
All right, so these guys, they're out camping. Let's get back to the movie.
Yeah, sorry, and I interrupted you horribly.
Nobody wants to listen to 4 hours of this. They're out camping. We sense, Luke looks haunted. We see him getting up out of his tent on the first night, and he gets out and immediately lights up a cigarette and just kind of look brooding. His friends sort of, it's clear that there's some animosity here. And we learn that the purpose of this trip was to sort of pay tribute to their dead friend, and they set up kind of an effigy for him, and they've got a little picture of him and some, mementos that were important in his life. They all, drink a little sip out of the flask and then, pour it on the curb for their
They pour
friend.
one out on
they
the
pour one
curb,
for their homie.
so to speak.
There's a curb in northern Sweden in the mountains. You gotta look really hard to find it, but it's there. And
Wasn't that in The Sound of Music?
And then things like quickly kind of take a dark turn. We sense that there's something wrong during that scene. You know, it starts to feel kind of uncomfortable. And then chubby guy with the glasses, who has no other distinguishable qualities except that he whines a lot, twists his ankle. Dom twists his ankle, and then immediately things are kind of descend into chaos from there. I think that's really the catalyst.
There's certainly some tension between everybody that's obvious, and much like Backcountry, it's an angry walk in the woods at that point.
For sure, yeah.
I didn't really have a sense of how long their trip was supposed to be, because he twists his ankle, and it seems like that's going to turn a one-day hike into, you know...
So, they did outline it, right? Do you remember this?
Yeah,
I don't remember the hours.
They give a direct, like, it's like 14 and 7 or something like that. It's 14 hours and then 7 more hours. So it was basically they got out there in a day and a half, and they were going to go back in a day and a half.
Okay.
So they were going to be spending a couple nights out in the middle of nowhere, which they were aware of and prepared for. And yeah, Dom decides he didn't want. He wanted to twist it, and he twisted his knee when he went down.
It was to be clear. It was a deliberate decision. He decided, I'm going to sabotage this trip. I'm going to hurt myself really badly, and I'm going to be miserable for a very long time.
He wanted to whine, and he gave himself a reason to whine.
He did expertly.
Very well done. Props to Dom.
Yeah. And so far so good. And then, you know, they go through they're like, all right, well, we'll take a shortcut that will maybe result in less walking on our dude's part. And all goes well until they see like a fucked up deer hanging in a tree, all eviscerated and shit. And they're like, well, that's probably natural. Let's just keep walking.
Looking like Alex in Backcountry.
Whoa, spoilers.
Wow. Yeah.
Spoilers.
If you haven't watched Backcountry,
you've had 2 weeks
waiting to get spoiled, I'm so sorry for what Patrick just said to you.
Well, this is where the movie, there's a lot of great nature photography here. I got the sense very quickly that it felt kind of like Alien to me, where like the characters are sort of like around that turning point. The characters are dwarfed by the setting, by the trees.
Yeah,
and they're all kind of like symmetrically lined up, single file as they're walking, so like kind of Kubrickian as well. Like I got the sense that like I'm in a forest here that looks slightly unusual to me because it doesn't look quite like the forest I'm used to, and it did feel like alien terrain, like something bad is going to happen. They're venturing into a place that they don't have a map for.
Yeah,
and I started to get kind of creeped out, honestly. There's some really beautiful alien-esque shots. I was reminded of when they were first exploring the xenomorph ship with their little headlamps on.
I like that analogy more than I would have expected.
Yeah. But I will say, I was very quickly disappointed that I did not continue to feel that way as this movie went on.
No.
It's a dense pine forest. If you've been in a pine forest, that's standard.
The trees themselves are like a character in this movie to me, though. They look so distinctive the way they're shot. They're like you said, pines, and they're bare. The limbs are bare, and they're shot in such a way that they're really densely spaced together. And sometimes you can just barely see slivers of people or sometimes creatures moving between them. And it's a really unique visual. And it's unusual that you wind up with a movie where someone comes up with a creative way just to shoot fucking trees. I was impressed by that.
Yeah, and it looks good. And the movie, this is something else that's interesting. It's shot, speaking of Netflix originals, in an unusual ratio. The movie is not quite 185:1 or whatever.
And it's not 16:9.
And it's not 16:9.
Tiny black
It looks
bars.
like the same ratio as is used in House of Cards, where it's just like an inch off your 16:9 TV. But it's not like a standard theatrical aspect ratio. And I thought that was interesting.
Do you think, I mean, clearly that's a deliberate decision. Why do you think they did that? What do you think it lended to the atmosphere or the look of the movie?
I wonder if it's...
Have we decided do we know whether or not this wasn't shot for Netflix, or was it?
As far as I know, no.
I don't know then.
It may have been a budgetary reason, just to give them some room to work on camera shake or something.
Could have been.
Could be.
I will tell you that as someone who dabbles in making videos and films, when I watched House of Cards, I noticed the same sort of aspect ratio, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting ratio. I kind of like it because it still gives you space, but it's not boring like 185:1, which is basically 16:9. Like if you look closely at the edge of your TV on an old movie, there's a little bit of space there. But
did they change that at all in House of Cards, or has it maintained that same?
I think it's maintained
ratio?
the whole time. But yeah, so what I'm saying is it's a little bit taller than what you're used to seeing in a letterboxed movie, and a little bit narrower than what you're used to seeing in another movie that may fill most of your screen. I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if that happens a lot with theatrical movies.
I don't either, and that raises an interesting question of like, you know, what are sort of the ethics of like the look of a film or the aspect ratio for streaming services? I don't know.
Well, it certainly frames the trees better when you're talking about these pine forests, and it's
Yeah.
all very vertical.
Yeah, it gives you a little extra width, but a little extra height at the same time.
Well, it gives you extra height. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Well,
give
no,
you-
I mean like versus 16:9,
Right,
it
right.
gives you a little extra width.
Right.
Yeah, width, height, these are things I think about a lot. So what happens next? They wind up in the woods, and they find a cabin. One thing I love about this movie...
There's a
is
storm.
there's a storm, and they need to find shelter, and of course, conveniently, there's a creepy cabin for them to hole up in. There's a lot of debate about whether or not they should break in the door, which is ridiculous because it's clear that no one could have possibly lived here within the last, 100 years.
And that's creepy. Now, I often wonder, watching horror movies, whether things are creepy because we know we're watching a horror movie and we're expecting horror, and that kind of makes everything scarier, or whether the events are just kind of creepy in themselves. Now, Patrick and I went on a hike in the mountains of Panama. Remember the abandoned house we saw?
Oh yeah, I do.
That
Arañas. House of 1,000 arañas.
We were afraid of the arañas. We were afraid that there were going to be spiders in the house.
Yeah.
But that was fucking creepy, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Because we're hiking this mountain trail for a couple
Beautiful
hours.
sunny day.
Beautiful sunny day. We come to a little clearing in the jungle, and there's just this cinder block house that was 2 stories sitting there. We have a picture. Maybe we'll throw it on our Facebook or something. And it was not an inviting place.
No one in there. We walked in there, and what was in there? I don't remember
Did
now.
we walk in there?
I think so.
We didn't see any huge spiders.
It wasn't inhabited.
No, it wasn't. But
Yeah,
still,
that was
a
weird.
little weird. A
Was
little
it all cleared
unsettling.
out? No stuff at all in there?
I don't remember there being any stuff.
Were there any statue or
effigies
things,
of
made
gods?
out of hay with deer antlers held over the heads?
No. But if there had been, that would have been fucking terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have made this scene in the what's
The
the name of
Ritual.
the ritual
The
that
Ritual.
much creepier for you guys.
Well, yeah. So I did think of that though, because sometimes you hike into some random place and you see a random ass structure that's abandoned, and that's a little bit weird.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But if you saw a bird's nest, you wouldn't be creeped out. But for some reason, people abandoning something is scary as hell.
Right.
Birds abandoning something, that's fine.
Normal.
It was not fine for me. My worst nightmare. Abandoned bird's
Bird's
nest.
nest. My worst nightmare is not knowing what bird's nest soup is made of.
God damn it.
Birds' nests. They go into the scary cabin in the woods, and I mean they're thinking nothing of it. They just want out of the storm, but they go in and investigate. Somebody smashes a chair because he's a jerk. They go upstairs, and there's this an effigy of it's a headless man, and instead of hands he has antlers, and it's weird.
Chicken feet too.
Do the chicken
Oh,
feet?
yeah.
I thought it was
webbed
just sitting on a
feet.
chair. Oh,
Yeah, webbed
so
feet.
weird.
That was the most cringeworthy detail for me. That gave me the creeps.
It's creepy. So, Carrie, our friend in Texas, said that this was, I forget the word she used, but she was like, yeah, it's spooky, it's creepy. And yeah, there's a lot of creepy, spooky imagery in this movie. I definitely see where she's coming from.
Well, yeah, and then the next thing that happens after that is the storm, which, I mean, even just this bizarre, nightmarish sequence happens in the midst of this storm, but even just the sort of the opening moment to that, when a flash of lightning strikes and it just freezes, the whole cabin is still lit up with lightning and the sound stops. That was a really cool, surreal moment.
That was
I like
amazing.
that a lot.
I love that moment.
Yeah, just a flash of lightning holding and not going away. And then Luke stumbles outside, and the woods look like the party store from the opening scene.
Because that's the light, right? The lightning
fluorescent.
freezes,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
the
actually
fluorescent
the
bulb
fluorescence from the store.
Yeah, because the lighting, and this is all very cleverly set up, the lighting in the party store in the first scene, or early scene in the movie, is very distinctive. It's these fluorescent lights overhead that keep flickering, and so it's a very distinct lighting cue that calls back immediately when you see it. And it's so weird seeing those lights hanging in the woods and the shelves of liquor in the woods. It's a really cool visual.
My favorite part of this movie was every time they combined the party store video visuals with the forest visuals.
Yeah.
Did it ever wear out for you, though?
No.
Because for me,
No,
it did. There
not
was
at
a
all.
specific point where I was like, all right, that looked fucking awesome, but also I'm done with this. I don't need to be reminded of what the catalyst for this entire movie is over and over and over and over again. It stopped serving a purpose at a certain point.
Well, the dramatic way it played out got old for me, but I love the visuals.
It
of
looked
every time.
awesome. I mean, it was really inventive. I don't know if I've seen anything quite like it. I mean, there's a shot where you see like fluorescent lights hanging in a row down this sort of like corridor in the forest and
of trees.
And
yeah.
you wonder how they shot that. I mean, it had to be on a
it
sound
looked
stage.
natural, right? Like
Yeah,
it didn't look like
looked
there was any.
great. I loved the way the dirt floor looked. In that, like, it was just, you were in a convenience store, but it had a lush forest dirt floor.
Yeah,
It
And
was cool.
slowly, the more they show it, the more there's like moss growing over like all the bottles
Yeah.
and stuff. It looked cool, but I just felt like it became kind of a tired motif.
So I kind of liked it in that it kept, whether it was a dream or something supernatural, that kept throwing this character back into what was the worst moment of potentially his entire life, but at the very least his recent life, and adding that stress to him throughout this movie while he's stuck in the woods with a guy with a bum leg and they have no idea where they are. I thought it was cool. I liked it.
Yeah, that visual didn't get tired for me because it was different each time. There was sort of a variation on it each time. As Greg mentioned, the forest floor is growing into the party store in one shot, and another, like Steve mentioned, there's the row of fluorescent lights hanging between trees, and it was a different take every time.
There's the one part where one of the killers looks up at him and he's got like white glowing eyes, and
Yeah.
it's fucking creepy.
Yeah,
All good stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, creepy shit, creepy visions. Basically what happens is they spend the night in this random house and they all like have horrible fucking trips in the middle of the night.
Yeah, the alpha male pisses himself, which is something I come dangerously close to often while recording this podcast.
has
Identified with that moment.
5 holes in his chest.
Yeah, we should mention when we have the sort of flashback, to the convenience store in the woods. So we see something moving through the trees. The trees are moving around, and Luke, is that his name?
Luke, yeah.
Chris O'Dowd. He wakes up with like 4 or 5 puncture marks in his chest, like he's been like poked by a beast.
I thought
like
it was
claws.
at first I thought he had been shot with like a shotgun or something. Like there's a little bit of a spread of like little tiny wounds in them. But
That's kind of what I thought too initially.
They look fairly wide and deep, like something that might puncture a lung.
yeah, but then you eventually, I mean, you never really find out what it is, but yeah, you can infer by the end of the movie that he was kind of punctured with something, maybe from a beast.
Yeah, maybe. We could just be.
We're not in the
Believe it or
spoiler
not, we
room
may
yet.
talk about it at the spoiler room.
Yes, everybody's had their own trip. Everyone's freaking out, and then from there it's chaos. They get lost. It turns out Alpha Male, he doesn't really have I think they lost their map, or he wasn't consulting the map. It's very much like Backcountry, where it's like he's pretended he knows where they're going, and really he has no idea.
Well, no,
He's
even
leading
in
them
the like
astray.
when they're in that cabin, he's like, "We've got a compass, we've got a map, we have provisions, we'll be fine."
The compass stops working as soon as they get into the woods. That was something I remember. He
I
looked
didn't
at it and he was
remember
like,
seeing it go.
and then he
kooky.
was like, and he just threw it in his pocket and was like, all right, well, we're fucked. And then he pretends he knows the way the entire time from there on out, and gradually tensions start to escalate.
They did bring it out again.
Really?
Which way's southwest, and he goes, that ridge over there, and points off to the side. So I mean, I don't know, maybe he was just looking at it, consulting it, and putting it back in his pocket. I don't know, but
I don't know. There's definitely a scene where he like shakes it and he's like, okay, fuck it.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, guys, this is about the part where I rapidly started losing interest.
Oh yeah, me too.
I was with it for the beginning. I thought that when they spend the night in the house, all that stuff was very tense, very spooky, creepy visuals. You get the sense that they're being stalked again, similar to Backcountry, by a cult of some sorts. You're like, uh-oh, there's people out here who hang deer from trees, and they're up to no good.
Yeah, when they walk out of the cabin, there are symbols carved on all of the trees surrounding that cabin.
Which they did see the symbols before they went in the cabin, but I think on one tree, and then they come out and it's like the entire everything in front of it.
Yeah.
So people have been here. You get the sense that it's like kind of a Blair Witch sort of thing. It's all very spooky. I'm into that. And then it kind of just becomes a bunch of guys walking in the woods and getting
bickering
fucked up,
and
arguing. I don't know. I lost interest pretty damn quick.
And the characters aren't really developed from there on out. It's like, yeah, we get it. Our protagonist is still wrapped with guilt about their allowing their friend to die, and we're as an audience supposed to kind of be half on his side because we don't know what we would have done in that situation.
I was on his side. I mean, first of all, I thought it was so unrealistic for the other friends to be so pissed off at him.
Yeah,
about
to even hint at any sort of blame for that seems completely out of control.
Like, who the fuck knows what you would do in that situation?
Blast you in the face if you blamed me for somebody getting killed by somebody else. I mean, we would not have gone on that trip together.
Well, he does punch him in the face.
Yes, he does.
I was kind of hoping that they would hint that he had some other fundamental fatal flaw, and that like being witness to his friend dying and not stepping in was like the final straw for everybody. But that's not
like
the case.
It was like they lost. No, it was just
like
one
he
guy.
fucked up once, and they just won't let it go.
And he didn't even fuck up. I mean, he
didn't even fuck up. You're right.
A stressful situation. I mean,
well, you guys are blowing this out of proportion. One friend says that he walked out and didn't have blood on him. It's not like the whole group is like, oh yeah, Luke's an asshole. There's one scene where
at one point
Dom confronts him.
He brings it up. He says, well, I already said that. I said it once. I'll say it again. I don't blame you for it at all. But the fact that he even brings that up,
I thought
it's kind of implicit that he's at least thought about it and how that went down.
There's 3 people on the trip other than him. One of them overtly calls him out on it. But then before that, he's talking to the alpha male guy, and the alpha male guy is like, hey, don't worry about what everyone else thinks. Whatever you had to do is fine. Yeah. But then even the alpha male later on is like, I don't know, man. Maybe you fucked up. Maybe you did.
Yeah. There's a scene where he's kind of like, I don't know. I have no clue. Like, I can't figure this out.
I wasn't there. I don't know. It's your business.
But that's his driving trauma. But I can't really tell you anything about that character other than how he relates to that specific experience.
And that's why I was bothered by the repeated motif of the convenience store thing. Like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's just reminding us that that's the only thing we know about this guy. Yeah. Over and over and over again.
But did you want to know anything else about any of them?
If they're making,
which is kind of a bummer to begin with, but
I would like to see, yes, because I was hoping that something about them and their relationships with each other would tie into the greater horror that they encounter later in the film, and it turns out that doesn't really happen. Those two things never really dovetail.
I don't mean it necessarily in the context of the movie, but in the context of those characters. Would you have wanted to know any of them?
No, absolutely not. They are not people I'd want to spend any amount of time with.
No, for sure.
So I think they gave us just enough about
about maybe
Luke.
Right. Yeah, they saved me some time and effort for sure.
No, yeah, but that scene is treated as so pivotal, but we never really know what it means, I guess. I mean, we know what it means. It's a source of guilt, but
what does it all mean?
Maybe there's a cultural difference that we're missing in the gang of friends at the bar that we don't have here or something. But
I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. But I've
seen World's End, and that moved me more than this movie did.
But nobody likes each other. It seems like it's just, I don't know. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and it's like they seem like they don't like each other even from the beginning of the movie, but then when they go on the trip, it's like, is it because there's this weird rift because their friend died and they're still uncomfortable broaching the subject? I get the sense that they're just too old to be hanging around each other.
Was
anymore.
The dead friend the glue that was keeping them all together?
Oh, maybe.
Who knows? These are all good questions. I wish the movie had answered.
It would have been
Yeah.
great.
It certainly had time to answer these questions, but it's just showing us a bunch of guys kind of traipsing through the woods, looking spooky shit happens.
Well, and the other thing is the cabin bit becomes sort of repetitive. They keep going to cabins, and then they go to sleep, and some weird shit happens.
Yeah, they go to sleep somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Well, to be fair, they saw the next cabin, and they definitely did not go monkey with that cabin.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
love the
yeah,
way that
that's
cabin
true.
is shot too. While Patrick and I were watching it, my second time through, I was like, somehow just the way it's framed in like the colors and everything, like the cabin feels like a character that's like alive. The
Yeah.
way the camera's like slowly zooming in, and it's like you don't want to fuck with that, and they don't.
I don't want to necessarily compare it directly to Evil Dead 2, that cabin that you see, but it had that
There are shades of
similar feel. Yeah, yeah. Maybe just a hair less dark or nefarious looking than the cabin from Evil Dead 2, but yeah, it was definitely a spooky dooky place.
When you talk about how they framed it with the zooms, when you talk about how they framed it, I noticed there were zooms
Yes,
involved.
very slow delivered
Very slow zooms,
yeah.
which you don't see zooms a lot in movies these
No.
days. It's kind of lost. People stopped using zooms sometime in the 80s.
I mean, I'm a huge Altman fan, so I love the zoom. Like
Yeah.
a good zoom is. Well, it gets me off, frankly.
That's a little more information than we needed.
How many zooms were there in this movie, guys?
You can watch it a third time and find out.
Man, what is Zombies going to do for you? Thankfully,
It just did so much for me, just you saying that.
Yeah, so I mean, I really don't know what. How would you describe what happens to what kind of movie is this?
I would say it's very much in the British like folk horror tradition. I mean,
Okay.
Am I allowed to say Ben Wheatley on the podcast anymore?
No. Because we saw Kill List. This kind of did remind me of Kill List.
Didn't it? I mean, I don't know which is more problematic, honestly. But it definitely feels like that kind of movie where it's like...
Wait,
it's
you
like,
mean that you and Chris saw Kill List?
or that we saw this movie?
Or that it reminded him of Kill List?
No, I mean it's very much like taking I think what is now like coined as like British folk horror is like taking sort of real world kitchen sink drama, usually involving like crumbling relationships or like friendships on the rocks, and then mixing it in with kind of like occult elements, and treating it in a naturalistic way, and that's very much what this movie does. I don't know. I don't have anything to say.
Is Blair
beyond that.
Witch a British folk?
Well, it's not
horror?
British, but
Outside of that, it sounds like it's outside of
That's
not being British. It kind of follows the theme.
I think so. And isn't this very similar to Blair Witch? Like
Yeah,
without the
it feels
shaky
like
cam,
it, right?
without
And,
the
I mean, it's more
found
direct
footage.
in how people die than Blair Witch was, because after that, like the first night, we have one of the guys is just gone. And they don't know where he is, but they all have
right.
nightmares again. And as they're walking through, they see him just splayed up on a tree. The same as the deer that they encountered earlier. Just his guts and gore are blooping out of him.
And that's kind
Blooping
of
out.
most of the
Blooping. I like
movie
that
is
verb.
them walking through the forest, and then something happens, and one of them gets snatched.
Lord of the Ritual.
And I don't know. I've seen this movie compared to The Descent.
I can see
I
it.
can kind of see it. You kind of have these people who are just kind of going on in the wilderness and shit's. I don't know.
This movie need more spelunking, I think. That's its problem. I'm glad you brought it
I
up.
don't know if it
Unfortunately,
needed
he
more.
had a bad knee. He wasn't going to be doing any spelunking. So,
But there's just so much. So we just watched Backcountry last time, and this movie, it does so much more than Backcountry, but doesn't accomplish as much for me. Like Backcountry, I thought the horror of the situation was very palpable and realistic, and here I'm just watching people, and then a tent just fucking flew into the trees. Like, I don't give a why? It's loud, but that's all it is.
yeah, it's a jump scare, and then it's a poorly paced set of tension and break the tension. And it just didn't do a lot. It was a lot of walking, and then people yelling at each other, and then their tension building moments of was always at night when they were going to bed, and then they dealt with it. It was generic and plotting, I guess, is a better way to describe it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if they had The middle section is the worst part for me.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of the ending either, but I feel like maybe they could have saved it. Like the beginning and the ending were interesting. Maybe they would have worked together with something else in between.
It felt like two separate ideas that were kind of grafted together very lazily. Like, I don't think there was any cohesion. And yeah, in the middle, it definitely suffers for that. We just get a lot of kind of bitching and slogging through the woods. And then things get really interesting after that. I mean, then like the real horror starts to kind of take shape. And I don't even know how to deal with that outside the spoiler room.
We're going to have to go to the spoiler room pretty soon. I will say there is some really creepy shit. So, again, our listener, Carrie, said it's creepy. There is some really interesting, creepy stuff. There's some spooky visuals. There's some stuff I haven't seen before. There's some stuff I really like. There's some stuff that got under my skin. But the bulk of the movie wasn't that.
It felt like they were trying to follow the formula for making the second act twice as long as the first and third acts. And they were just trying to get it done on paper the way it is in a textbook. And it didn't fit. It didn't play.
If this had been a short,
oh man,
would have been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could have cut it short and left it up to the viewer more. I mean, let's just re-edit it and submit it to Netflix. See if they'll buy it from us.
Well, maybe we should just review it because we're basically been doing that already.
That's true. Yeah, who wants to go first?
Chris should go first because he always goes last.
Ooh.
Chris, would you
breaking the order,
cue it, or screw it?
I would screw it. Sorry, Carrie. Honestly, yeah, there were a few scenes I liked. I was with it for a little bit, but you know, I'm kind of going off of Steve's philosophy, which he explained a few episodes ago, where it's like, would I recommend this movie to myself if I didn't know anything about it? Fuck no. Like Backcountry I may be biased because I watched it so close to Backcountry. And Backcountry, I just thought succeeded a lot better at what it was trying to do. I will say this movie, I think, was trying to do more thematically. There was some stuff I didn't quite grasp. There were some good parts, but I don't know. I just thought most of it was a slog. So fucking screw it. Patrick, would you cue it, view it, or screw it?
I would say cue it. There was a lot I liked about it. Some really memorable visuals. I thought the characters were thinly written, but I liked the interplay between them. They felt to me like a natural group of friends, and there were definitely some really creepy, unsettling moments in it. I kind of disagree with the idea of recommending it to myself because when I'm thinking about view it, cue it, or screw it, I'm thinking about generally the person I'm imagining recommending it to is someone who's more open-minded than me or any of us. Yeah. I feel like most people who listen to this have less discerning taste than we do and are probably less...
Well, if you're listening to this show, Carrie? Definitely.
And are probably less assholes than we are. Yeah, Carrie, you're definitely less of an asshole than I am at the very least. So yeah, I'd say cue it.
Well, maybe something we should note is that this movie has gotten some acclaim. Yeah. Like, I was looking it up on Twitter. A lot of people have seen this movie. A lot of people have loved this movie.
It has like a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes or something.
Your mileage may vary.
I remember hearing something positive about this on NPR, if I'm thinking clearly. So it's been receiving a lot of praise from a lot of places.
Well, Greg, would you view it, cue it, or screw it?
So I know I'm not allowed to do the it depends thing, so I'm going to go with a strong cue it.
That is it depends thing.
Right, but what does that mean? I'm saying if you were going to just fast forward through some of the walking, it would be a view it. Like if you could lop out some of the guys talking angrily at each other, it would absolutely be a view it. But as the movie stands on its own, it's a cue it.
Even the guys talking to each other didn't bother me. I mean, I like the drama between them. I just didn't like the stuff where it's like
there was just too much of it.
They're sleeping, and then the tents are flying around, and there's weird shit. We're flashing.
But if that were closer together to the first thing, like they stay in the cabin, there's less walking in the woods, and then they go back to sleep, and they would at least tie together better, and the weird stuff happening in the dreams would be fine again. I'd be all right.
So you're saying use your fast forward button, make it a short yourself.
Yeah. Cut it from an hour and a half to like 45 minutes, and it's a view it.
Oh, I would agree. Steven.
I'm being very forgiving this month. I'm going to give it a Q it.
Wow.
I think I've seen it twice. I enjoyed different parts of it each time. I don't think it's not a great movie. I think it has a couple of things about it that we can't discuss until after we go down to the spoiler room, but I think are things that we don't necessarily see in horror movies, especially low-budget horror movies lately. It reminded me a little bit of A Dark Song and how far it committed to the premise and into delivering the goods. I think if this had been released on VHS in the 80s, it would be a cult classic now. A movie that I would have loved as a teenager and then grown out of eventually, because there's not a lot thematically or character-wise to really hold on to and analyze here. It's kind of it's a one-trick pony, and I think it's a movie that once you've seen it, there's definitely no reason to go back. There's nothing, you're not going to find any nuggets or treasure under the rocks when you pull them over. Like, it's just
there really is no strong single character in this movie that makes me like think that is my protagonist. That is the guy that I'm rooting for right now.
You don't. That's a really good point. You don't root for anybody. Really,
I can think of one, but I think we're going to wait to discuss him in the spoiler room.
The trees?
No, we already discussed them a bit.
Well, hey, one last thing. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but before we go to the spoiler room, I will say, I think we would all agree, there's some good creature design.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention that before. I mean, when you guys were talking about sort of the foreboding nature, I mean, more than anything, you see like this elephant-like creature being suggested following them, but you never quite see what it is.
Yeah,
exactly.
I thought it was just a dude in like a robe with weird antlers on.
Yeah.
So I never...
But it's so big. It's like, it moves the trees. It like shakes the ground as it moves.
I never really put that together. It just felt like it may have been somebody hiding and chasing.
Mm-hmm. The second time through, I was amazed at like how apparent, knowing what it looks like at the end, I was amazed at like how clearly you can see it throughout the film. But yeah, first time going in, how would you know?
Yeah, so definitely some creative stuff going on in this movie. Some high marks in some categories, but we're going to spoil everything in a minute, so go watch it if you want. Otherwise, stick around. We'll be back after the break. We'll tell you everything that happens. Stick around if you want. Welcome back to Every Horror Movie on Netflix. We're back in the spoiler room, about to spoil everything about The Ritual.
It is much colder in the spoiler room this week than it was last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg, you were supposed to build us a furnace in the past 2 weeks, and what's up?
That's my fault. I twisted my knee, and I couldn't walk.
So
rough. So
the essential reveal of this movie is that our heroes are being chased, stalked, what have you, hunted by a large creature, which apparently is some sort of Nordic god.
It's Loki's cousin. Sweet little baby.
Yeah.
I don't remember him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I don't think Loki banged any mooses in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that's, I feel like, what happened there.
Yeah.
I would love to see this thing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh my god.
Dude, me too.
I want Surtur to fight it.
Thor 4. I want Korg to fight it.
But basically, it's just galloping through the woods, fucking up everybody, and then our heroes finally make it to like a commune where there's a bunch of old ass, like,
you can call them hippies,
decrepit hippies, Nordic hippies, chilling in these fucking log cabins, torturing people and sacrificing them to the fucking moose god. And that's the ritual.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it like we learn all this information fairly quickly as the film goes on, and I was kind of baffled, puzzled, as Patrick might say, because it didn't
or baffled, as you might say.
I would say baffled. You'd say puzzled. All right, we have our own catchwords.
I'm confused.
Well, I have two things to say about that, Greg. Yeah, we learn this very quickly, and like it quickly becomes like a Wicker Man sort of scenario, and it doesn't really tie into. And I'm talking about the superior Nicolas Cage remake, not that shitty original with Christopher Lee. Yeah, I don't know. That's it. I was just like, I couldn't believe that that's where this movie wound up. I know it's called The Ritual. We see these occult symbols or whatever. Suddenly, we just kind of get a monster movie for 20 minutes. Doesn't tie in thematically to anything that's happened so far.
Would you even call it a monster movie?
Yeah, I would. I just did.
We need to describe this monster, though.
It doesn't. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Monster movie.
That
Fine.
seems to be the
Good
focus.
enough.
It was like
Not
they
like
came
a
up with
kaiju.
they came up with this great creature that Patrick will describe because he died. Or if you're comfortable doing that, because you delighted in seeing it, and I was like,
oh yeah,
yeah, and that seems to be the focus of the movie. They came up with this great like maquette of this monster, and like, oh, we can do the CGI, we can make it look pretty good for like 10 minutes. That's all you get.
Look great.
Until that last shot.
Yeah.
Oh
Oof.
my gosh. That lighting was so far off.
Really?
Yeah, the contrast was
I know it was weird.
terrible.
Yeah.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I thought it looked great, especially for a Netflix movie, especially for the kind of
When they were,
budgets
it
we're
looked
talking about.
so good everywhere except when it was standing at the edge of the woods.
It's like
waiting.
in like half morning light, half like there's still like flames burning in the forest. It just looked weird.
It
There was
looked
like kind
really
of
bad. That's,
It was
like
weird.
that last shot of it was the worst.
Well, Patrick, describe this fucking monster.
Oh, I mean, it's a fucking 12-foot tall, emaciated moose with giant vertebrae sticking out of its back, and its head is basically a Jawa. It looks like a Jawa from Star Wars with the glowing eyes, and then there are two basically human arms emitting from where its face should be. So it stomps around like a huge moose, and when it's about to fuck you up, it gets its weird little glowy-eyed Jawa face up in your face and grabs you with its human arms.
Caresses your face with its
Yeah.
dead hands.
which is
fucking
like
bizarre.
the Jawa face is like like where the Adam's apple would be on the creature,
Right.
kind of, because it's got this big antlery head that is shaped like the effigy that we see earlier in the movie.
Yeah, so the above the head actually looks like a human torso.
Yeah, that's
with
what I was going to
antler
say.
arms.
It looked like moose, but instead of a head, it was like an upside down person with its head on backwards.
Yeah, and then where you would see the person's cock and balls, you see a face. You see a Jawa face.
That's why I said upside down person, but okay.
And right above where its actual cock and balls are, there's another set of arms that you see only briefly. They don't really come into play. That
Great.
like come out of the hips.
Great imagination. But
Amazing
what the fuck does
creature.
it have to do with the rest of the movie?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I don't know.
It's fucking Loki's child.
Loki's child. Okay, so they end up in a house. The two survivors, one of them is our guy who saw the convenience store murder. They're taken captive by this cult, I guess. And our hero has the fucking 5 dart marks in his chest from where the beast touched him. And the other guy doesn't. So they're like, all right, well, this other guy we're going to torture. For no apparent reason, they torture him.
They were preparing
gonna
him
sacrifice
for the
him.
sacrifice.
What the fuck
And
did
because
they
he's
do?
got the marks on him,
Yeah, I
he's
don't know
been
what they
like
did to him up
he's
there.
been like chosen by Loki's bastard cousin to be one of his disciples.
Yeah.
He's given a moment where, as Gregory pointed out, that I did not. I was kind of confused. Like the monster sort of does this weird yoga
It
pose
rears up
thing.
on its hind
rears
legs.
up, and I thought it was like bow, like that was its way of like bowing to the human, but no, he's like worship me basically, and the guy refuses to and runs out of the woods.
Yeah, because it's been established that everybody kneels before this creature, and I think the creature is like, kneel before me. I think that's the idea.
And he isn't having any of it.
No. Yeah, he gets instead, the thing just stomps down on his face and shoves him back in the dirt and forces him to kneel.
I mean, I love this creature. I think it looks fucking sweet. There's an amazing shot of it in front of this cabin as it's burning. But as Steven and I were talking about this, like, as soon as it starts running around, especially through the liquor store in the middle of the woods, it's just weird when it starts running around and you can see it clearly.
That's probably why they made it disappear so much.
Yeah, behind the
They
liquor
just
store
couldn't figure
shelves.
out how to make him look decent. So he'd charge, and then it would just disappear.
Yeah.
And Luke would be like, huh, looking around everywhere
Yeah.
for it, and you just
That's a
hear
great
it's
impression.
behind him and stuff.
But I just have such a hard time taking any of this seriously, especially because the cult members are fucking caricatures. Like, they don't look like real people. They look like, oh, let's try to make a
They're like
creepy looking
circus
person.
freaks.
Yeah, they found
Right.
the weirdest looking people
I
they
loved
could, and
it.
then put
I
weird
loved
makeup
them.
on them. I thought they so she said that if you bow to this thing, would they like a Jutun or something like that? Is what she
Jotun.
called Jutun.
I don't know what they call it.
I don't know what that means, but it's probably weird Loki baby.
It's
So she says-
actually Norse mythology because it's used in the Thor movies as well, and it's adopted from actual Norse mythology. I forget what it
I mean, I
means.
assumed it was.
Yeah.
I just I don't know much.
I think
don't
that's
know
like
anything
Is
about
this
it.
movie part of the MCU? Is what I want to know.
No, but
Loki's bastard
Maybe.
child has been...
it's an extended post-credit scene.
Maybe it's part of not the MCU, but the Netflix Marvel universe.
Uh-oh. So we'll see that thing on
Could be.
Daredevil.
Yeah, it'll be on Jessica Jones.
Oh, that'd be sweet. I want the
Hiring Jessica
Defenders
Jones
to
to
fight
find
that thing.
Luke.
Yeah.
Maybe Luke's last name is Cage.
Oh, there we go. So, what was I? Oh, yeah, the blonde lady. So there's this blonde lady captor. She's the one that's, she goes in to feed Luke and explains that if you kneel to it, if you bow to it, you will live forever and you won't feel pain. But
Yeah,
looking at them, it looked like they felt nothing but pain. So...
It's no way to live. And that's
doesn't
basically
seem
what
like
our
it.
hero says
Yeah.
to his credit. But I don't know.
He says he'll never kneel.
I don't know. So he escapes from his fucking shackles. He goes, explores the compound. I did like some of that. He finds their sort of like commissary where they have all the shit they've presumably stolen from people over the centuries, and they got some old rifles and some blankets and stuff. He goes up, he finds this weird ass like church of desiccated corpses that somehow
what was
are
that all
talking and screaming
Right.
and shit.
And
I
it-
love that.
And
That
at
was
this
fun.
moment, he's like sneaking around and all of a sudden decides to start torching these corpses that scream as they burn.
They seem like they're just like desiccated corpses,
Yeah.
but yeah, when he burns them, they start
even
screaming.
before that, they start like making noise and
opening their
opening
mouths.
Yeah.
I like that. That
It's
was
like,
great.
dude, if you're sneaking around, get out of the room where things are making noise.
One
in
more
reaction
thing about
to you.
sneaking actually in this, because every time they've been trying to sneak around, I threw air quotes up there because it drove me nuts. They had the flashlight on. He's running around with a torch. Look, just because you're being quiet doesn't mean you're sneaking. You got to put that shit out.
Yeah.
Anyway, he burns this house down.
He burns the place down.
All these
he
poor
pisses
dead
off
people.
The god.
Oh, that god was
He
pissed.
almost is about to fucking escape in the clear while the god beast is distracted, but then he's like, you know what? I got one more shot in my rifle. Why don't I take a fucking pot shot at God himself? What a great idea.
It didn't work very well for him.
What happens when you
He should have been American. It would have made more sense
Oh,
if he was
yeah.
American.
I mean, if you shoot a bear,
Fucking
it's just going to
Loki.
get more pissed off. Apparently, you shoot a god, guess what? Same thing happens. It just gets more pissed off. It chases him.
Charges him.
I'm surprised the god is not immune to bullets.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked that it actually had an effect on it. I thought maybe it'd be like startled by the sound.
Yeah, I feel like gods are different in other mythos than God that we see in the Bible. Like, it seems like there's an awful lot of people hurting gods in the various other cultures that just doesn't happen in the Christian Bible. So maybe that's something we just don't have that same connection with.
Yeah, there's no story about anybody like cutting out the eyes of the Christian God or
Right.
something like that.
Nobody's even
I
stood
mean, they fucking crucified him.
he was,
No, but like God
that was
the
a
Father,
sacrifice
not
to
the
be-
Son.
yeah, I
God
mean,
the
It's
Father.
the same thing.
And,
No, it's not.
Well, you talk to Catholics, I think it all
Yeah,
is,
what are
but-
you talking about?
But I mean, that was Jesus' sacrifice to become God, right? And
Listen, this isn't a theological podcast.
This isn't every theology on Netflix, right? It's
Not yet.
It will be if we have a couple more beers.
That would be an interesting every Christian movie on Netflix.
Oh,
Every movie on PureFlix.
Oh, right, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Is that a real app?
PureFlix is the Christian Netflix.
how much do they charge?
I don't know. I wish I had a witty answer, but I don't know. So yeah, our hero basically
I was trying to think, what did Judas get paid?
what did he get paid? Like 2 coins.
It wasn't much.
Silver shekels. Or
Yeah.
something like that. Yep.
Anyway, so our hero just escapes the compound with the beast chasing them, and then they have a moment. It's tinged with eroticism. What happens?
Stands up, shows him his erection, and then Luke refuses to kneel to Loki's kid.
But
Did you
Loki's-
find that? Did you actually find that tinged with eroticism, or are you joking?
I was being
I don't
sarcastic.
know what was going on between them, but yeah, there is like a mutual respect between them for a minute.
For sure. Yeah.
And so this is where I'm starting to think that the whole thing is just trying to achieve something thematically that I couldn't quite grasp.
The problem
It's not you. Yeah, it's not you.
But, like, so there's something there about how this beast gets off on people's pain and anger and stuff. And there's this guy here who's been repressed by his pain and anger. And then towards the end of the movie, he's like, here I am. He's screaming at the beast. He's trying to see the beast as an equal, and the beast kind of sees him as an equal. I think because of what he's been carrying around from the convenience store thing.
I mean, the final stroke of this battle is right after this weird thing where the beast pushes him down. He sees again the murder of his friend in the convenience store getting slashed in the face with like a machete.
I think he just hits him in the face with a club and it splits his cheek.
I thought it was a blade of some sort.
I thought it was a blade too. But
later on, it looked like it was just a club.
Anyways, I mean, he sees that again and is inspired to pick up this hatchet and slice the beast's face in basically the same way that his friend was killed, which
kind of undermines the mutual respect thing that they
that thing also shoved his face back in the dirt to say kneel to me, basically.
So I'm frustrated because I can tell that they're going for something intelligent, but I can't receive it, and I feel like it's a problem with me.
It's not.
It's not. It's a presentation issue. 100% it's a presentation issue.
Yeah.
None of us even have any clue what the theme of this might be. So
my bizarre-ass fan theory is just that the whole fucking series of events was in his head, and it's a metaphor
for Jacob's Ladder scenario.
It's a metaphor for his trauma over the convenience store thing, and, like, it's just...
But then why does it... Then how does the occult come into play in that fantasy? That's why I'm like, these two things do not equate.
You're right. I don't know.
It's a mess. It's based on a book,
the cult
which I'm curious to
is
read.
the pressure from his friends visualized that it's his fault.
Just stop
and he just needs to kneel to that and accept that it's his fault. And then the beast comes and says, it's your fault, and stomps him down, and he says, no, this is not my fault. Chops it in the face and's like, I fucking won. It wasn't my fault. I'm out.
I don't know.
And then he gets out of the woods of this. No, that movie was a fucking mess.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a mess. It's a mess,
Nice
and it's
try.
terrible. And the end is stupid. I'm frustrated because I can tell that they're going for something better, and I don't want to be like, oh, this is all just stupid bullshit. I laughed the whole time, even though I did. Because they're going for something. They're going for something smart. They didn't land it. I don't know what they were going for. I wish I did.
They're going to tweet and say that I was right with my made-up theory that I was creating as I went. So, wait.
It is clear to me that there was some truth in what you said, that, like, the final moment of catharsis is him finally accepting it's not my fault. You know, like, in, like, all my other three friends died.
It only cost him all of his friends.
Yeah, I know. My other three friends died, but I tried to save each and every one of them. I tried to do the right thing, but that doesn't mean that that one is necessarily successful when they have the best of intentions.
Well, there we go. We figured it out. All we had to do was talk about it.
So
there's something there.
That's what they're trying to do, but it doesn't come across well, and it's laughable. I laughed so hard the first time I saw this movie and saw him screaming back at the monster. They're having this call and response, and I was like, really? This is our final cathartic moment of growth for the protagonist?
I thought that was great. I loved it. Yeah.
There it is. You guys are wrong.
I mean, so I've been making comparisons to Backcountry because they both involve the woods. That's basically it. But
and Bad Days.
But, like, Backcountry is a movie that makes no attempts. Yeah, Bad Days. Backcountry is a movie that makes no attempt to achieve anything thematically, really. And this movie attempts to achieve the world thematically and fucks it up and leaves me confused and frustrated. Which is better? I don't know.
I was confused at Backcountry. Like, why did they feel that was a story that needed to be told? That was my main confusion there.
Yeah.
Well, at least with this one, I could appreciate what they were going for in making this weird ass story.
You felt like this was important to somebody,
right?
Even though it doesn't
exactly. But I don't feel like the filmmakers in Backcountry had anything personal tied to their movie. Yeah. At least this one felt like they were trying to get a message out in some way. They just didn't do a terrific job of it.
And hopefully, there's people out there who can receive this on the same frequency and appreciate it for what was attempted, but that's not me.
It's not
Doesn't
me
sound
either.
like it's any of you.
It ain't me, babe.
All right, so what are we watching next time, Chris?
Yeah, what are you guys going to do without me next time?
Well, we're going to spin the Wheel of Death to find out. That's what we do every few episodes. We spin the wheel, and then one of us, lucky sons of bitches, gets to pick the next episode. So we're going to bring out the wheel, and we're going to see. Here we go. I'll give Steve the honor of spinning.
What do I just...
Just spin it. Now, Greg isn't on the wheel because he's only the special guest, so you're not going to win this time, Greg.
Are you sure?
If you come back more often, maybe we'll
I'm going
put
to
you
hack
on
your
the
wheel.
All right, hack my wheel. But now
That
Steve's
sounds like a sex
going to
thing.
spin. We're spinning. Oh, God. Oh. Steven.
Close.
Oh, it was almost Patrick. It was like wanting so bad to be Patrick, but
was
then the wheel was like, fuck
so
Patrick.
close.
It's
Just a tick
Steven.
away.
I'm so glad. Steven, you've been waiting for this moment all your life. What's the pick?
I'm just gonna pick something at random out of my brain. I've got a few I've been thinking of watching for a while. I think we're gonna go with Before I Wake. I think Chris looks very excited right now. Mike Flanagan movie that was made a couple years ago that kind of got buried. That is now being branded as a quote-unquote Netflix original.
I'm super excited. My only concern is we were like 3 episodes away from watching that in alphabetical order.
I was gonna say we're in the bees.
Too fucking bad. All right, well, do you want to watch Zombies?
No.
Yes.
No, that's the finish line. We're not taking any
Yes.
shortcuts to the finish.
How about
Zombies
Zombies?
will be gone before you get to
Zombies.
Before I Wake is a fine selection.
All right.
I can't wait. We're going to do Before I Wake by our friend Mike Flanagan next week. I hope you all join us, except for Gregory. He's probably not coming. And hey, until then, follow us on the Facebook, follow us on the Twitter, follow us on all the social medias. Send us a note, send us a troll. Maybe we'll troll you back.
How do you quantify a troll? Like, you mean like the little
Like a
dolls
troll
with the hair?
doll.
Yeah, with the little jewels
I know
in the
it
belly
when I
button.
see it. All right, listen. 2 weeks from now, we'll see you again. We're doing Before I Wake. Until then, for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Gregory.
I'm Steven.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.